In the dusty town of Abilene, Kansas, in 1884, two 8-year-old twins would approach a stranger with a request so heartbreaking it would change the course of 3 lives forever. Emma and Ethan Sullivan had watched in horror as their mother was dragged away to the town's monthly debt auction, sold to pay off their father's gambling debts after his death in a saloon fight. With nowhere else to turn, these brave children made a desperate plea to the only person who looked like he might have enough money to help them. What happened next would test the moral boundaries of the Old West and prove that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power to transform hardened hearts. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of family. Comment what you would have done in this situation, and subscribe for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in humanity. The morning sun cast long shadows across the main street of Abilene, Kansas, as the monthly debt auction prepared to begin in the town square. This grim spectacle had become a regular feature of frontier life, where the desperate were forced to sell themselves into temporary servitude to pay off debts they couldn't otherwise settle. The practice existed in legal grey areas, tolerated by authorities who saw it as preferable to debtor's prison. 8-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan Sullivan, huddled behind a wooden crate outside Hutchinson's general store, their identical green eyes wide, with terror as they watched their mother, Catherine, being led to the auction block in shackles. Their father's gambling debts had consumed everything the family owned, and his death in a saloon brawl 3 weeks earlier had left them completely defenseless against creditors. Catherine Sullivan stood on the platform with the dignity of a woman who refused to be broken by circumstances beyond her control. At 32, she had endured the harsh realities of frontier life with grace, raising her twins alone while her husband pursued his destructive habits. Now she faced the ultimate humiliation, being sold like livestock to strangers who cared nothing for her humanity or her children's welfare. The auctioneer, a thin man named Cornelius Wade, called out the terms with theatrical enthusiasm that barely masked the human trafficking occurring in broad daylight. 1 year of domestic service to settle debts totaling $400. Strong, healthy woman experienced in all household duties. His voice carried across the square, drawing a crowd of onlookers and potential buyers. Several rough-looking men gathered around the platform, evaluating Catherine with the cold calculation of people purchasing property rather than hiring a human being. The twins recognized some of them, ranch owners known for their brutal treatment of workers, saloon keepers who would force her into unspeakable circumstances, and others whose intentions were clearly predatory rather than legitimate. Employment. As the bidding began, Emma and Ethan felt their world collapsing around them. They had no relatives in Kansas, no family friends with resources to help, and no understanding of legal procedures that might protect them. Their mother had told them to be brave, but bravery felt impossible when faced with the prospect of permanent separation from the only person who loved them. The highest bid came from Silas Grimm, owner of a notorious establishment that combined saloon, gambling hall, and brothel under one roof. His offer of $200 was motivated by intentions that made Catherine visibly shudder and the twins instinctively recoil in horror. Grimm's reputation for exploiting vulnerable women was well known throughout Abilene, though rarely discussed in polite company. Just as Wade prepared to bring his gavel down on this devastating sale, the twins noticed a lone figure watching the proceedings from across the street. James McAllister sat astride a magnificent black horse, his weathered leather coat and silver spurs marking him as a successful cattleman. More importantly, his expression showed disgust rather than interest in the human auction unfolding before him. Emma grabbed her brother's hand with desperate determination. "He looks different from the others," she whispered urgently. "He looks sad about what's happening, not excited like those awful men." Ethan nodded, recognizing the same quality in McAllister's bearing that their mother had always possessed, a fundamental decency that set him apart from the predators circling their family's destruction. Without discussing their plan, the twins broke from their hiding place and ran across the dusty street toward McAllister, their bare feet kicking up small clouds of dirt as they raced against time. The auctioneer's voice continued behind them, building toward the final sale that would separate them from their mother forever, unless someone intervened immediately. "Sir! Sir!" Emma called out, her voice cracking with emotion as she reached McAllister's horse. "Please, mister, you have to help us." Her desperate plea cut through the noise of the auction, causing several people to turn and stare at the children who had disrupted the proceedings with their bold approach to a stranger. McAllister looked down at the twins with surprise, taking in their threadbare clothing, tear-streaked faces, and the raw desperation in their young eyes. Something, in their appearance, struck him with unexpected force. Perhaps recognition of his own childhood vulnerability, or simply the universal human response to children in genuine distress. His weathered hands tightened on his horse's reins as he prepared to hear what they had to say. James McAllister had come to Abilene to conduct routine business, selling cattle and purchasing supplies for his ranch 50 miles north of town. At 45, he had built a successful operation through hard work and fair dealing, earning respect throughout Kansas for his integrity and business acumen. He had not come to town expecting to confront the moral complexities of human trafficking disguised as debt resolution. The twins' desperate faces stirred memories McAllister had tried to bury for decades. As a child in Missouri, he had watched his own mother struggle against circumstances beyond her control after his father's death in the Civil War. The powerlessness he had felt then echoed in the desperate eyes of Emma and Ethan Sullivan, creating an emotional connection he couldn't ignore or rationalize away. "Sir, can you buy our mom back from the auction?" Emma blurted out, her words tumbling over each other in urgent desperation. "That bad man wants to take her to his saloon, and she told us terrible things happen to ladies there. We don't have any money, but we'll work for you forever if you save her." Her plea contained the innocent faith that adults possessed magical powers to fix impossible situations. Ethan stepped closer, his small hand reaching up to touch McAllister's stirrup. "We're real good workers, mister," he said with the earnest conviction of a child trying to negotiate for his family's survival. "We can clean stables and feed chickens and help with cooking. We won't eat much, and we'll never cause trouble. Please don't let that scary man take our mama away from us." McAllister felt his chest tighten with emotions he had kept carefully controlled for years. His own ranch was successful but not wealthy, and $400 represented a significant investment in complete strangers. More troubling, purchasing a person, even to free them, felt like participating in a system he found morally repugnant. Yet the alternative was allowing an innocent woman to be sold into virtual slavery. The auctioneer's voice carried across the square as Silas Grimm's bid remained unopposed. "Going once at $200. Wade called out, his tone suggesting the proceedings would conclude momentarily unless another bidder emerged. Catherine Sullivan's face showed resigned despair as she prepared for her fate, having spotted her children talking to the stranger but holding little hope for intervention. McAllister's internal struggle intensified as he weighed practical concerns against moral imperatives. He was a bachelor who had never considered taking on the responsibility of a woman and 2 children. His ranch operated efficiently with a small crew of experienced hands, and adding a family would complicate his carefully ordered existence in ways he couldn't predict or control. Yet something in the twins' faces reminded him of promises he had made to his dying mother about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. She had made him swear to use whatever success he achieved to help others facing the same powerlessness they had experienced. This moment felt like a test of whether those childhood promises had been mere sentiment or genuine commitment. "How much does your mother owe?" McAllister asked, his voice rougher than usual, as emotions he rarely acknowledged threatened to overwhelm his composure. The twins looked at each other with confusion, clearly not understanding the financial details of their family's situation, but recognizing his question as a sign that he might be willing to help them. "The man said $400, Emma replied, her voice gaining strength as she sensed possible hope in McAllister's tone. "But Mama said we don't have any money at all. Since Papa died, and nobody else cares what happens to us, are you going to save her, mister? Are you going to bring our family back together?" McAllister closed his eyes briefly, knowing that his next decision would irreversibly change multiple lives. $400 would require him to liquidate nearly all his available cash and possibly mortgage part of his ranch. He would be taking responsibility for 3 people he had never met, with no guarantee that the arrangement would work out for anyone involved. "Going twice!" Wade's voice echoed across the square, and McAllister could see Grimm's satisfied smile as he prepared to claim his purchase. The sight of that predatory expression made McAllister's decision for him. Whatever practical concerns he harbored, he could not allow a decent woman to be delivered into such hands while her children watched helplessly. McAllister dismounted from his horse and placed gentle hands on the twins' shoulders. "Stay right here," he told them. Firmly. "Don't move from this spot, and don't worry about anything else. I'm going to bring your mother back to you." His words carried the authority of a man accustomed to solving problems through direct action and personal responsibility. As he strode across the street toward the auction platform, McAllister felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. He was about to make the most expensive and complicated decision of his adult life, motivated by nothing more than the desperate plea of 2 children and his own conscience. The financial risk was enormous, but the moral cost of inaction felt even greater. James McAllister's boots struck the wooden planks of the auction platform with authority that immediately commanded attention from the crowd. His presence changed the entire dynamic of the proceedings, as his reputation for fairness and financial stability was well known throughout Abilene. Silas Grimm's confident expression faltered as he recognized a legitimate competitor, with both the means and apparent motivation to outbid him. "Hold on there, Wade," McAllister called out, his voice cutting through the auctioneer's final countdown. "I'd like to examine the terms of this debt before any sale is finalized." His businessman's approach introduced legal complexities that Grimm had hoped to avoid, knowing that closer scrutiny might reveal irregularities in the debt collection process. Wade hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the delay but unable to ignore McAllister's reasonable request. "The debt is $400, accumulated through gambling losses and unpaid store credit," he announced, producing a ledger that contained the financial details. "Payment in full would secure the woman's immediate release, or she can be purchased for 1 year of service at current bid levels." McAllister studied the ledger carefully, his experienced eye catching several discrepancies that suggested the debt had been artificially inflated through excessive interest and penalty charges. Patrick Sullivan's original gambling losses totaled less than $200, but additional fees had doubled the amount owed. The practice was legal but morally questionable, designed to trap families in permanent servitude. Catherine Sullivan watched these proceedings with growing hope tempered by realism. She had observed McAllister's interaction with her children and recognized something in his demeanor that separated him from the other men who had bid on her services. Yet she also understood that $400 represented an enormous sum that few people would spend on strangers, regardless of their good intentions. Grimm stepped forward aggressively, unwilling to lose his anticipated purchase to a competitor. "I bid $300, he announced loudly, raising his offer to demonstrate serious commitment to acquiring Catherine's services. His increased bid sent murmurs through the crowd and caused the twins to gasp with renewed fear from their position across the street. $450, McAllister responded immediately, his calm tone contrasting sharply with Grimm's aggressive posturing. The amount exceeded the total debt, effectively purchasing Catherine's complete freedom rather than merely transferring her servitude to a different owner. His bid represented not just financial commitment, but philosophical rejection of the entire system of debt slavery. The crowd fell silent as the implications of McAllister's bid became clear. He was not participating in the auction to acquire cheap labor, but to liberate someone from an unjust system. His actions challenged the moral foundations of practices that most people had accepted as necessary evils of frontier economic life. Grimm's face flushed with anger as he realized his prey was slipping away. $500, he shouted, his voice carrying the desperation of a man whose dark plans were being thwarted by unexpected competition. The amount represented more than he had ever paid for anything, but his desire to possess Catherine had become personal rather than purely business-motivated. McAllister studied Grimm with the cold assessment of a man who had faced down dangerous opponents in various contexts. $600, he said quietly, his tone carrying finality that discouraged further bidding. The amount represented nearly everything he had available in cash and credit, but he could see the fear in Catherine's eyes, and hear the twins' desperate prayers from across the street. Wade looked between the two bidders with obvious confusion, as the amounts being discussed far exceeded normal parameters for debt auctions. "Mr. Grimm, do you wish to continue bidding?" he asked, though his tone suggested hope that the proceedings could conclude before they attracted unwanted attention from territorial authorities who might question the legality of human sales. Grimm glared at McAllister with pure hatred, recognizing that he had been outmaneuvered by someone with both greater resources and stronger moral convictions. "This isn't over," he muttered, though his failure to raise the bid indicated defeat. He pushed through the crowd with the angry frustration of a predator denied anticipated prey, leaving behind an atmosphere of tension that would linger long after the auction concluded. "Sold to James McAllister for $600, Wade announced, bringing his gavel down with finality that echoed across the town square. The amount would more than satisfy Catherine's debts while providing a substantial profit to her creditors, making the arrangement legally unassailable, even if morally complex. Catherine's legs nearly gave way beneath her as the reality of her liberation sank in. She had prepared herself for the worst possible fate, and instead found herself rescued by a stranger whose motives she couldn't fully understand, but whose actions had given her back both freedom and her children. Tears of relief and gratitude streamed down her face as the shackles were removed from her wrists. The twins broke from their designated waiting spot and raced across the street the moment they saw their mother's shackles being removed. Emma and Ethan launched themselves into Catherine's arms with desperate relief, their sobs of joy echoing across the town square as their family was reunited against all odds. The sight of their emotional reunion touched even the hardened hearts of onlookers who had grown accustomed to frontier cruelty. McAllister completed the financial transaction with Wade, signing papers that transferred ownership of Catherine's debt to him, and then immediately executing a second document that released her from all obligations. His lawyer's training from years past served him well, as he ensured that no legal loopholes could be used to re-enslave the Sullivan family in the future. "Ma'am," McAllister said respectfully, approaching Catherine and the twins with the careful courtesy of a man who understood the delicate nature of their situation. "You're free to go wherever you choose. The debt has been paid in full, and you owe nothing to anyone." His words carried the weight of legal certainty, but also the gentleness of someone who recognized the trauma the family had endured. Catherine looked up at her unexpected savior with eyes that reflected both gratitude and bewilderment. "Sir, I cannot possibly repay such generosity," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, $600 is more money than I've seen in my entire life. How can I ever thank you for giving me back my children and my freedom?" McAllister felt uncomfortable with gratitude for actions he considered basic human decency. "No thanks necessary, ma'am," he replied quietly. "Every person deserves to be free, and every child deserves to stay with their mother. I simply had the means to make that happen in this particular situation." His words reflected values that had guided his life, but rarely been tested so dramatically. The twins attached themselves to McAllister's legs like small anchors, their gratitude expressed through actions rather than words they were too young to fully articulate. Emma looked up at him with adoration, typically reserved for fairy tale heroes, while Ethan clutched his coat with the desperation of someone afraid their rescuer might disappear if not physically restrained. As the crowd dispersed and normal town business resumed, McAllister faced a practical problem he hadn't fully considered during his emotional decision to intervene. He now found himself responsible for a woman and 2 children with nowhere to go and no immediate means of support. His ranch was a bachelor establishment, ill-equipped for family life, but abandoning them in Abilene seemed to defeat the purpose of his rescue. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said carefully, "I have a proposition that might benefit all of us. My ranch needs a housekeeper and cook, and I suspect you have skills in those areas. The position comes with housing for you and the children, fair wages, and complete freedom to leave if the arrangement doesn't suit your family." His offer provided dignity through employment rather than charity. Catherine's relief was evident as she realized McAllister was offering not just temporary rescue, but long-term stability for her family. "I've managed households my entire adult life," she replied with growing confidence. "I can cook, clean, garden, preserve food, and manage ranch accounts if needed. The children are well behaved and won't cause problems for your operation." The journey to McAllister's ranch took 2 days by wagon, during which the unusual family group began to understand each other's personalities and expectations. Catherine proved to be intelligent, capable, and remarkably resilient despite her recent trauma. The twins revealed themselves as curious, energetic children who had been forced to mature quickly by their families' circumstances, but retained essential childhood wonder. McAllister discovered that his rescue had been more successful than he had dared hope. Catherine's household management skills transformed his ranch from a functional but Spartan operation into a genuine home. Her cooking improved the morale of his ranch hands, while her organizational abilities increased overall efficiency in ways that more than justified her wages. The twins thrived in their new environment, attending the local school and helping with age-appropriate ranch chores that taught them valuable skills while allowing them to contribute to their family's success. Emma showed particular aptitude for working with horses, while Ethan displayed mechanical talents that proved useful for equipment maintenance and repair. As months passed, what had begun as a crisis-driven rescue evolved into a mutually beneficial partnership that enriched all their lives. McAllister found that his ranch felt more like a home with a family, present, while Catherine gained security and respect she had never known during her marriage to an unreliable gambler. The children flourished in an environment that valued their contributions while protecting their innocence. 3 years later, when Catherine and McAllister married in a quiet ceremony attended by the entire local community, Emma and Ethan served as witnesses to a union that had grown from desperate circumstances into genuine love and mutual respect. Their family had been saved by the courage of children who refused to accept defeat and the conscience of a man who chose compassion over convenience. The story of the twins who begged a cowboy to buy their mother's freedom became legendary throughout Kansas, inspiring other acts of intervention when vulnerable people faced exploitation. It demonstrated that individual conscience, supported by adequate resources and moral courage, could triumph over systemic injustice when ordinary people chose to act rather than merely Observe others suffering. McAllister's ranch prospered under Catherine's management and became known throughout the region for its fair treatment of workers and support for families in crisis. The $600 he had spent on a stranger's freedom proved to be the best investment of his life, yielding returns measured not in money, but in human happiness and dignity restored. Years later, Emma and Ethan would tell their own children about the day their desperate plea to a stranger changed their lives forever, teaching new generations that courage and compassion could overcome even the darkest circumstances when combined with willingness to take personal risks for others' welfare. Their story became a testament to the power of human decency in the face of systematic cruelty.